These negroes, which Captain Abraham All delivered to me, were in such poor condition, due to the poor transportation, that I was forced to sell 8 boys and girls for a mere £27, 2 other for £45, and 2 women each for £35. No doubt English money. Abraham Pereira Mendez was very angry and accused Aaron Lopez of cheating him. This letter delineates to us that this generous and fine citizen of New York was insatiable in his greed for money. This is what caused the Rabbi Morris A. Gutstein to present this nobleman, Aaron Lopez, to pursue his objectionable methods. Negroes presented to him but a commodity. In all the letters which the Carnegie Institute published, it stresses the lack of human sympathy for the poor Negro slaves. This lack of feeling and compassion for the abused and pitiful blacks at the hands of their Jewish dealers can be read out of the diary of a captain who manned a ship owned by Aaron Lopez. The entries concern a trip from the African coast to Charleston. Moreover, they are authentic documents published by the Carnegie Institute in Washington, D.C., calling attention to an organization which had heretofore known little or nothing about. Neither had they encountered further publicity in books or newspapers. Therefore, it is not to be wondered at that the facts of the leading share of American Jews in the slave trade could be pointed out as a monopoly and unknown to the non-Jewish Americans, including the great masses of people all over the world. Others, however, acquainted with the facts, had good reason to remain painfully quiet. The captain of another ship, the Othello, among other things, makes the following entries in his diary. February 6th, 1 man drowned in the process of loading. March 18th, 2 women went overboard because they had not been locked up. April 6th, 1 man dead with flux. April 13th, 1 woman dead with flux. May 7th, 1 man dead with flux. June 16th, 1 man dead by Cap Henry. June 21st, 1 man dead by James Fluce. July 5th, 1 woman dead with fever. July 6th, 1 girl, sick for 2 months, died. This vessel was on its way for 5 months. What terrible and unspeakable suffering was the lot of these millions of blacks, who were torn with brutal force from their friendly African huts, jammed together like animals below deck, and then sold with less concern than selling a head of cattle. Small wonder that 10 of them died, being purchased for just a few dollars and then sold for the sum of $2,000. Some Negroes managed through insurrection to gain control of one or another ship and turned it around, with full sails toward their African home. The crew of one slave ship, called 3 Friends, for instance, tortured their black cargo in such manner that the Negroes reciprocated in a bloody rebellion. They killed the captain and the entire crew and threw the dead overboard. They then sailed back to Africa, where they had barely escaped their hard-won freedom. A similar fate struck the slave ship Amistad. Among the slaves was the son of an enemy tribal chief. Once the ship was underway, he schemed with his compatriots to attack the ship's crew. Following a bloody battle, they managed to capture the captain. The Negro prince forced him to turn back to Africa. Then, in the evening, under cover of darkness, he changed his course, zigzagged for months until he came close to the American coast, and encountered a government ship. This took place in the year 1839, when slave trading was already forbidden and illegal. What the movie Amistad will not tell you is the Jewish involvement in the slave trade. The Negro slaves were freed and the captain punished. These sea voyages were not without danger when they had black cargo, which accounts for the fact that the Jews most always engaged non-Jewish captains. The slave dealers preferred to remain in their offices and counted the fat winnings following each journey, such as Aaron Lopez, who left his heirs one of the largest fortunes in the New England era. When reviewing the documented facts contained herein, it is important that one always remembers that it was a lucky captain who did not lose more than 9 out of 19 slaves on the return trip. It is equally important to remember that these poor black creatures had to lie in human excrement for the entire trip. Think about it. No wonder sickness and disease took such a high toll. Remember the figures. Approximately 110 million black people were captured and removed from their homeland in Africa. Only 11 million of these black slaves reached the colonies alive. And the Jews still talk about the Germans and Hitler and how supposedly 6 million Jews were exterminated during World War II. This is the greatest lie ever perpetuated upon the people of the world, whereas the story of the poor black slaves is documented with truth. The evidence is still available for the people of the world to see. The Carnegie Institute of Technology is located in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. As this movie and the document which I am narrating from is distributed, eventually reaching the hands of the Jews, the evidence will probably be removed and destroyed until finally all documentation is removed which is damaging to the Jew. The Jews have been engaged in this practice for centuries. Truth, however, truth which bears fact, cannot remain covered or hidden forever. And more truths are being disclosed by those of us who intend to free America of these sons of the devil, the Jews. The published documentation contained herein was obtained from the Carnegie Institute of Learning, presently known as the Carnegie Institute of Technology. The following is a partial list of the slave ships owned by the Jews. The Abigail by Aaron Lopez, Moses Levy, and Jacob Franks. The Crown by Isaac Levy and Nathan Simpson. The Nassau by Moses Levy, Four Sisters by Moses Levy. The Anne and Eliza by Justice Bosch and John Abrams. The Prudent Betty by Henry Kruger and Jacob Phoenix. The Hester by Mordecai and David Gomez. The Elizabeth by David and Mordecai Gomez. The Antique by Nathan Marston and Abram Lale. The Betsy by De Wolf. The Poi by James De Wolf. The White Horse by Jan de Sviets. The Expedition by John and Jacob Roosevelt. The Charlotte by Moses and Sam Levy and Jacob Franks. The Carcoa by Moses and Sam Levy. Slave runners, also owned by Jews, were the La Fortuna, the Hannah, the Sally, and the Venue. Some of the Jews of Newport and Charleston who were engaged in the distillery or slavery trade, or both, were Isaac Gomez, Hyman Levy, Jacob Malhado, Naphtali Myers, David Hart, Joseph Jacobs, Moses Ben Franks, Moses Gomez, Isaac Dias, Benjamin Levy, David Yeshuvim, Jacob Pinto, Jacob Turk, Daniel Gomez, James Lacana, Jan de Sviets, Isaac Elizer, Jacob Rod, and many others. Of some 600 ships leaving the port of Newport, more than 300 were engaged in the slave trade. A typical cargo of one ship, La Fortuna, was 217 slaves, which cost about $4,300 and sold for $41,438. Only about 10% of the slave ship captains were Jews, not wanting to subject themselves to the rigors of the 6-month journey. They preferred to stay at home and continue their distillery operations, which continued to supply rum and whiskey to the Indians for many years at a very great profit. You can continue your own research through the following references and documentation. Finally, we cannot undertake even this brief history of the modern Jew without taking note of a phenomenon which has confounded Gentile societies for 20 centuries. This is the ability of the Jewish people to collectively retain their identity despite centuries of exposure to Christian civilization. To any student of Judaism, or to the Jews themselves, this phenomena is partly explained by the fact that Judaism is neither mainly a religion, nor mainly a racial matter, nor yet is it simply a matter of nationality. Rather, it is all three. It is a kind of trinity. Judaism is best described as a nationality built on the twin pillars of race and religion. All this is closely related to another aspect of Judaism, namely the persecution myth. Since first appearing in history, we find the Jews propagating the idea that they are an abused and persecuted people. And this idea is, and has always been, central in Jewish thinking. The myth of persecution is the adhesive and cement of Judaism. Without it, Jews would have long since ceased to exist, their racial, religious nationality notwithstanding. It is a fact that the Jewish people have suffered numerous hardships in the course of their history, but this is true of other peoples too. The chief difference is that the Jews have kept score. We must repeat, they have kept score. They have made a tradition of persecution. A casual slaughter of thousands of Christians is remembered by no one in 50 years, but a disability visited upon a few Jews is preserved forever in Jewish histories, and they tell their woes not only to themselves, but to a sympathetic world as well.